Picture this. I'm standing in my driveway on a cold December morning, holding a $50 fine for excessive holiday decorations. Just 3 modest strings of lights that my late wife Sarah had picked out herself. The HOA president, Beatrice Thornfield, stands there with that smug little smirk, telling me my simple display is lowering property values. That was the moment I could have lost my temper. Instead, I smiled politely and said I'd take care of it. 6 months later, the same woman was on her knees in front of 47 neighbors, begging me to shut off the most spectacular light show our town had ever seen. Lasers were painting her financial crimes across the community center walls while news cameras rolled and police took notes. The crisp December air carried the scent of pine needles as Beatrice's heels clicked away from my door that first night. She thought she'd won. She had no idea she'd just declared war on a widowed electrical engineer with nothing left to lose and a very specific set of skills. My name is Marcus Hartwell. I'm 47, an electrical engineer, and 2 years ago, I became a widower. We had moved to Willowbrook Estates for Sarah's health. The doctors said the cleaner air and quieter pace might help. Cancer had other plans. She passed on a quiet Tuesday in March, and I left her Christmas lights up until Easter because taking them down felt like erasing the last traces of her from our home. When December came around again, I put up the same 3 strings she had chosen. Nothing extravagant, just warm white lights that reminded me of her laugh and the way she'd stand in the doorway with hot chocolate, admiring her handiwork. Beatrice Thornfield ruled our HOA like a suburban dictator. For 8 years, she had enforced every petty rule with iron precision. She ironed her pajamas, alphabetized her spice rack, and wore her authority like that signature pearl necklace. Tight, suffocating, and impossible to ignore. Her husband was a real estate developer who'd built half the neighborhood, which explained why her own fence stood 6 inches too high and why her garage-based craft business selling macrame plant holders never drew a single fine, even though it clearly violated the no-home business rule. The morning she'd deliver my violation notice, I was brewing coffee when I saw her approaching, clipboard in hand, heels clicking like marching orders. "Mr. Hartwell," she announced at 7 sharp, "your holiday display violates community standards. All decorations must be removed by January 2nd. I stepped outside, mug warming my hands against the chill. "But it's still November," I said. She smiled without warmth. "Rules evolve. We can't have a neighborhood looking like a trailer park." 3 strings of lights. That's all it took to trigger her control complex. She handed me the notice and added that the fine would be $50 if they weren't down by tomorrow, doubling daily after that. I took the paper, smiled, and told her I'd comply. As her heels clicked away, something shifted inside me. This wasn't just about lights anymore. Beatrice had declared war on my wife's memory, and I wasn't about to let that stand. I removed the lights on January 3rd, just as demanded, carefully coiling each strand the way Sarah used to, my breath puffing white in the freezing air. I stored them neatly in labeled boxes in the garage. Sarah had always been meticulous about organization. I left the garage door open for a while because the memories hit hard and I needed the fresh air. 3 days later, Beatrice returned with a member of the architectural committee. "You're in violation of Storage Ordinance 47B, she declared. "Holiday decorations must not be visible from common areas." Several neighbors complained about the unsightly boxes. Another $75 fine for improper storage practices. The committee guy wouldn't even meet my eyes. That night, I spread the HOA bylaws across my kitchen table and started digging. What I found was gold. Our HOA hadn't filed the required annual financial reports with the state for 3 years. Without those filings, they could lose legal standing to enforce rules. I kept going. Over the next week, I walked the neighborhood with a tape measure and camera. Beatrice's fence was indeed 6 inches over the limit. Her craft business had regular customer traffic. Her husband's company truck sat in their driveway every weekend, violating the no commercial vehicles rule. I documented everything, photos, measurements, timestamps, and filed formal complaints with the board, copying every member. Word spread quickly. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly widow 3 houses down, called me with a shaky but excited voice. Neighbors started showing up at my kitchen table with their own stories. Mr. Kowalski and his fine bird feeder, the Chins and their daughter's sidewalk chalk art violation, quiet Mr. Rodriguez with his own stack of ridiculous notices. We formed an informal support group over coffee and shared pastries. For the first time in years, people realized they weren't alone. Beatrice's power had always relied on fear and isolation. Take that away, and she was just another bully with a clipboard. The emergency board meeting she called to ram through new retroactive storage rules turned into the first real confrontation. I showed up with a briefcase full of evidence and a room full of neighbors who had finally found their voices. When I pointed out the missing state filings and her own violations, the silence in the room was deafening. Beatrice's face cycled through every shade of red and white. She escalated. She hired her brother-in-law's unlicensed property management company, which immediately slapped everyone with massive new fees, $200 per month plus retroactive billing. My share came to $1,200 due immediately. I filed complaints with the state attorney general about the unlicensed operation. Meanwhile, we organized a resident meeting in the park, far from her eyes. 23 people showed up, sharing stories and pooling resources. Mrs. Patterson, a retired paralegal, became our unofficial legal guide. That's when we uncovered the real bombshell. Beatrice's husband's development company owed $47,000 in unpaid HOA fees and had received no bid contracts while Beatrice never disclosed the conflict of interest. The harassment intensified. Daily inspections, frivolous fines for grass too high by 1/8 of an inch, mailbox fading, even window condensation after a cold snap. My total hit $3,000 by mid-February. But I had installed security cameras early on. One morning, the footage captured Beatrice on her hands and knees at 6 a.m., measuring my grass with a ruler and muttering to herself. I posted the video to the neighborhood group. It spread like wildfire. Channel 7 News picked it up, and suddenly our little suburb was in the spotlight with a story about HOA overreach. Donations flowed in for legal fees. More victims went public. A city council member called for a review of local HOA regulations, and the state attorney general opened an investigation. Beatrice tried everything: restraining orders, changing locks on the community center, even staging fake vandalism on her own property and blaming me. Each attempt backfired. Police saw through the obvious setups, and the community only grew more united. Then Mrs. Patterson made the discovery that changed everything. In the dusty storage room of the community center, she found the original 1987 covenants. Buried in paragraph 17 was a sunset clause. The HOA would automatically dissolve after 35 years unless 75% of residents voted to renew it. That date was just 3 weeks away, March 15th. Beatrice had hidden the renewal notices, scheduled the vote for an inconvenient time, informed only her loyalists, and forged signatures on the paperwork. She had been running a shadow government, enforcing rules under false pretenses. We had 21 days to act. My living room became mission control for what we called Operation Spotlight. 15 of us planned meticulously. Mrs. Patterson handled legal strategy. The Kowalskis managed social media and press. I contributed the centerpiece, a professional laser light show donated by old colleagues from my lighting design days. We secretly installed high-grade projectors in the community center during routine maintenance, disguised as standard audiovisual equipment. With a tap on my phone, they could project charts, timelines, and text across any surface. Beatrice panicked when she realized the dissolution date was public. She tried moving the annual meeting earlier and limiting invitations. She offered bribes, threatened property values, and even attacked Sarah's memory with anonymous flyers. Nothing worked. The community rallied harder. The night of the meeting, March 10th, the community center was packed with 43 residents. News cameras were rolling. The state investigator and a city council member sat in the front row. Beatrice called the meeting to order, her voice cracking as she tried to force an immediate renewal vote. I stood and demanded the financial report. The investigator backed me up. As I began detailing the $87,000 in questionable expenses, payments to unlicensed contractors, inflated contracts to her husband's failing company. The lights dimmed and the laser projectors came alive. Financial charts glowed across the walls in brilliant color. Every fraudulent transaction highlighted. Gasps filled the room. Mrs. Patterson then presented the original covenants and the sunset clause, projected 3 feet tall alongside evidence of the forged signatures. "This is fabricated," Beatrice shouted, but her voice broke. The lasers shifted to spell out, "Truth illuminates darkness," across every surface as the room erupted in applause. Beatrice abandoned her gavel and fled toward the exit, leaving behind 8 years of corruption exposed for all to see. In the weeks that followed, we held an emergency election. I became president with 43 votes. We slashed fees by 60%, implemented full transparency, and refunded every frivolous fine. The embezzled funds we recovered helped establish the Sarah Hartwell Community Scholarship for local engineering students. In that December, we launched the Light Up Willowbrook Festival, a spectacular synchronized laser and light display that honored Sarah's memory, drew visitors from across the region, and raised money for the Children's Hospital where she had received her care. Beatrice and her husband sold their house at a loss and disappeared before criminal charges could fully catch up. My holiday lights still twinkle every December, visible from where their bedroom window once stood. The real victory went deeper than revenge. Leading the reformed HOA gave me purpose again. It reminded me that small acts of courage, like putting up a few strings of lights in memory of someone you loved, can spark something much larger. Community isn't built by rules enforced with fear. It's built by people who refuse to let bullies win. If you're dealing with your own HOA nightmare, document everything, gather your neighbors, and never forget that the association works for you, not the other way around. Sometimes all it takes is shining a bright enough light on the truth.